Hello and good day, Mike Adcock here with your worldwide tropical outlook for today, the 26th of July 2013. Do have a few areas we're tracking today, tropical storms Dorian and Flossie in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific. Do have newly formed tropical depression southeast of the Philippines, and then disturbance 90W just east of Hainan Island in China. Alright, let's start off with Dorian. This is from the 9 Zulu advisory package, about 2,300 kilometers east of the Leeward Islands, 45 knots, gusting to 55, and this is moving off to the west-northwest at 17 knots. Pressure's at 1,001 hectopascal. No tropical advisories as of yet in terms of watches and warnings. Looking at the MSI imagery here, not seeing quite as much convection as what we had yesterday or even earlier today. And what we're seeing there looks like a little bit of an increase in shear and some dry air in the mid and upper levels starting to affect Dorian. Earlier we did have a well-exposed circulation, not as exposed now, do have that convection kind of firing up, but it is a little bit elongated, so a little bit of challenges, at least in the near term, with Dorian's structure. Surface analysis from National Hurricane Center or National Weather Service does have Dorian now completely removed from the intertropical convergence zone as it moves off to the west-northwest. Here's your track forecast from the National Hurricane Center as it continues moving it westward. Concern right now is the Greater Antilles, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, under the gun in terms of the cone. Do have the Bahamas in that right now, and this is going to be interesting as we get towards the beginning half of next week. A little bit of an issue in terms of where the cyclone is going to go. We're seeing that in the models. The first 24 hours or so, pretty good agreement, but after that there's slight differences, and these slight differences are making a big difference in terms of who's going to get impacted. If you look at the southern end of the guidance envelope, affecting landfalls in the northern Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and then there's on the other side, we're missing the islands completely until we get to the Bahamas. Right now, the question is, okay, we've got the ridge up to the north. That's going to continue to build westward. So it's going to keep Dorian moving that way. It's just how far south is that ridge located? Will it keep it slightly north where it avoids the islands? Or is it going to make landfall? So a lot of uncertainty on the exact track, and we're going to see that kind of play out over the next few days. In terms of the intensities guidance, again, that's going to depend a lot on the track. Okay, currently we've seen a little bit of weakening, and that's due to that shear and dry air entrainment. We're going to deal with that for the next couple of days. Then, as Dorian approaches the islands, it's going to start interacting with an upper level trough that's it's near or just east of the Bahamas. Okay, how much shear affects Dorian? How much does the dry air currently, how much is it going to affect Dorian? The current mindset with the National Hurricane Center is that the shear may not be as bad as advertised by the GFS and ships. So with that said, they've increased or forecast a little re-intensification by 96 hours. However, if shear ends up being on point and Dorian can significantly weaken due to the hostile environment, with the landfalls, landfalls for Puerto Rico, especially Hispaniola, that could dissipate the cyclone rather quickly. So a lot of uncertainty, especially in the latter half of the forecast. Dvorak T 2.0 for your data T and final. The Met still up at 2.5. Advanced the advanced Dvorak technique a little higher than that, showing 51 knots. It's gone through some challenges in the near term. We'll see how it continues to battle out. Here's microwave imagery from about 2:31 Zulu this morning, or early, overnight anyway. Not a whole lot. And this is actually a pretty bad point in the cyclone's period. Well exposed circulation well to the south. Just a few barbs of tropical storm strength in the deep convection. It's a little bit better since this picture. So, sea surface temperature is really not an issue. It's going to continue to warm up, especially as Dorian approaches the islands and the Bahamas as well. So no real concerns there. Here's our upper air analysis, and this is what we're going to be dealing with. Okay, Dorian right here, just on the eastern side of this anticyclone. In this call region here, you can see the darker cloud or darker colors here, and that's that dry air, the subsidence out ahead of it. That's going to be a challenge. Then, as you get closer to the islands, you've got this upper level trough that's going to be digging south. Subtropical jet across the or a finger of the subtropical jet digging from across Puerto Rico and exiting around the southeastern periphery of this low. This finger, this jet core is what's going to give us quite a bit of shear, and that's going to be really what starts hindering or could hinder Dorian later in the forecast period. Right now, Dorian shear's not an issue, about 10 knots or so, low to moderate anyway. But as it continues moving west-northwest, shear increases significantly. We'll see how this ends up playing out over the next few days. The good news is, at least on yesterday's reconnaissance schedule, you see here there is an outlook for a 0 Zulu on the 28th Gulf Stream 4 mission. The G4, what it does is it flies out in and around Dorian, especially out ahead of it, and does upper level drops on. And by what it does by that is it gets a better sample of the entire atmosphere by flying at a high altitude. We can get an idea of what the mid-level and upper levels are doing. We can get an idea of how strong the trough is, how strong the ridge is. Really fill in a lot of the gaps in the models and really help that out. 12 hours later at 12Z, at that point they expect to start 6-hourly fixes. Should get another update here soon from the National Hurricane Center on their schedule. That should start seeing a few initial taskings. Once that does happen, I'll go ahead and post the new forecast or the new schedule out on Twitter so you can all see that. Alright, shifting gears now to Flossie. About 2,300 kilometers west-southwest of Baja California, 45 knots, gusting to 55, and we're looking at a westerly movement at 16 knots, 1,000 for your pressure. Starting to see deep convection consolidating around Flossie at this time. Here's our analysis. Still a little bit attached to the monsoon trough as it continues to move off to the west-northwest. The concern is in the National Hurricane Center forecast is by Monday evening getting into Tuesday, Flossie could affect the Hawaiian Islands, whether as a tropical cyclone or at least an area of increased showers and gusty winds. We're going to have to definitely watch that. It's going to be pretty active because considering at the same time Flossie will be affecting Hawaii, Dorian will also be affecting the greater Antilles. Here's our track forecast. Really no change there. The only concern is as you get, where is the position? If you're going to, we could see as far south as south of the Hawaiian Islands or north of the Hawaiian Islands. There's not enough packing where we're looking at some sort of an effect to the Hawaiian Islands. Right now, the official track is a little on the southern end of this envelope. And that could start to nudge its way northward over the next few model runs. The other issue is the forward speed. You could see do have some data points here of 72 hours. Right next to it some 96 hours. So how much will Flossie slow down? And a lot of that's going to be as Flossie starts to weaken as it approaches the Hawaiian Islands. It's going to start to get influenced more by the low level flow. How quickly does it get influenced by that low-level flow depends on how quickly it starts to weaken. Speaking of the intensity, here's your intensity guidance, and you can see pretty much all over some initial strengthening early on. That's just because still have some more time, about a day or so, over some relatively warmer waters. After that, cooler water sets in, dry air, some increased shear, and so should see a weakening trend thereafter. For our Dvorak analysis, not much to talk about here. 3.0 with that consolidated convection, the advanced Dvorak technique, about 51 knots with that. Here's your microwave imagery, a little bit better defined than what we saw on Dorian. Quite a bit of tropical storm force winds north of the circulation in that deep convection. For sea surface temperatures, as I mentioned earlier, cooling water is going to be an issue as it continues to track toward the Hawaiian Islands. And in terms of the upper air analysis, here's Flossie. Do have a little call area just to its west, some drier air, and that's going to be some of the challenges Flossie will see over the next few days. Of course, shear, as I mentioned earlier, will be another factor. Not too bad over the system itself, about 5 to 10 knots, but as you get closer to Flossie or to the Hawaiian Islands, 40, 50 knots. Do have a core here of 60 knot winds, or 60 knot of shear that the cyclone may battle. All right, let's look over at the Western Pacific. Do want to quickly touch on this disturbance, 90W, just east of Hainan province. Not really tracking much. Again, showers and thunderstorms for Vietnam, northern Vietnam, southeastern China. Really no change here. What is a new change is this new tropical depression. JTWC is tracking it as 91W. And it's getting enhanced right now by a TUT cell, or a tropical upper tropospheric trough. Light wind shear, plenty of warm water, upper 20s, close to 30 degrees Celsius. We're going to have to watch this as it develops over the next few days, how much increased showers and thunderstorms it provides for the Philippines, and then the track guidance continues it up toward the north, so looking for some impact at least to portions of Japan. That's going to be a concern. Intensity guidance a little haywire. Does show a strengthening trend, but a little of this is going to have to, it's going to depend on how quickly the depression starts to develop. This is still early on in the model guidance, so once it gets a good handle on the developing cyclone, we can get a better idea of how the cyclone will evolve. Of course, this concludes our outlook for today. Of course, get this and additional Western Pacific analysis over at westernpacificweather.com, or follow along on Twitter and Facebook. Of course, join in on the global tropical discussion at storm2k.org. Follow me on Twitter at Senior Pepper. I do post updates here and there between videos. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day, and take care.